income is $4,100 less than it was in 1999. The median male worker made over $700 less than he did 42 years ago in inflation adjusted for dollars. Do you know why people are angry? They are angry because they are working terribly hard, and yet in real inflation adjusted for dollars, they are earning less. And they're looking all over and they say, what's happening? Why is that? But it's not just men. Last year, the median female worker earned more than $1,000 less than she did in 2007, and 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. Today in America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, that's what we are today, more than half of older workers have zero retirement savings. Think about that. You're 50, 55 years of age, and you're thinking, all right, how am I going to retire? But because my wages have gone down, I have zero in the bank for retirement. And at the same time, all over America, you got millions of seniors and people with disabilities trying to survive on $12,000 or $13,000 a year Social Security. From Vermont to California, older workers are scared to death, and they are saying, how am I going to retire with dignity? And I want all of you can get your calculators out, not now, when you leave here. Do some arithmetic and try to put yourself in the place of a senior citizen in my state of Vermont, where it gets cold in the winter, trying to survive on $13,000 a year. And you tell me how you are going to pay for the food that you need, heat your home, and buy the medicine that you need. And you know what? You can't do it. Today in America, nearly 47 million people are living in poverty, and over 20% of our children, including 36% of African American kids, are living in poverty, the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any nation on earth. And what I want you to think about is, why is it in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, where we're seeing a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth? Today in America, 29 million Americans have no health insurance, and even more are underinsured with outrageously high co-payments and deductibles. In other words, people do have insurance, but I talk to people every day. They got a $5,000 deductible, $8,000 deductible. They can't go to the doctor when they need. And then on top of that, for a wide variety of reasons, our people pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And doctors tell me all of the time, we prescribe something, a medicine for our patients, they can't afford to fill that medicine, that prescription. 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors write. What insanity is that? Today in America, youth unemployment and underemployment is over 35%. For African American kids, it is over 50%. Meanwhile, we have more people in jail than any other country. China, communist authoritarian country, 4 times our size, we have more people in jail than China, and countless lives are being destroyed as we spend $80 billion a year locking up our fellow Americans. The bottom line is that today in America, we not only have massive wealth and income inequality, but a power structure built around that inequality, which protects those who have the money. Today, a handful of super wealthy campaign contributors have enormous influence over the political process, while their lobbyists determine much of what goes on in Congress. And any member of the United States House or Senate who is prepared to tell you the truth will tell you exactly that. Now, in 1944, in his State of the Union speech, President Roosevelt outlined what he called a second Bill of Rights. You're all familiar with our Bill of Rights. And what Roosevelt outlined was what he called a second Bill of Rights. This is, in my view, one of the more important speeches ever made by a president. But unfortunately, it has not gotten the attention that it deserves. So I'm going to give it some attention today. In his remarkable speech, this is what Roosevelt stated, and I quote, "We have come to a clear realization of the fact that true individual freedom cannot exist without economic security and independence. Necessitous men," and we would add women, "are not free men and women," end of quote. In other words, real freedom must include economic security. That was Roosevelt's vision 70 years ago. It is my vision today. It is a vision that we have not yet achieved, and it is time that we did. In that speech, Roosevelt described the economic rights, R-I-G-H-T-S, rights that he believed every American was entitled to. The right to a decent job at decent pay. The right to adequate food, clothing, and time off from work. The right for every business, large and small, to function in an atmosphere free from unfair competition and domination by monopolies. The right of all Americans to have a decent home and decent health care. What Roosevelt was stating in 1944, what Martin Luther King Jr. stated in similar terms 20 years later, and what I believe today is that true freedom does not occur without economic security. People are not free, they are not truly free, when they are unable to feed their family. They are not truly free when they are unable to retire with dignity. They are not truly free when they are unemployed, underemployed, or when they are exhausted by working 60, 70 hours a week. People are not truly free when they don't know how they're going to get medical help when they or a family member are sick. So let me take this opportunity to define for you, simply and straightforwardly, what democratic socialism means to me. It means building on what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said when he fought for guaranteed economic rights for all Americans. And it builds on what Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1968 when he stated, and I quote, "This country has socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor," end of quote. My view of democratic socialism builds on the success of many other countries around the world who have done a far better job than we have in protecting the needs of their working families, their elderly citizens, their children, their sick, and their poor. Democratic socialism means that we must reform a political system which is corrupt, that we must create an economy that works for all, not just the very wealthy. Democratic socialism, to my mind, speaks to a system which, for example, during the 1980s, and I want you to hear this, allowed Wall Street to spend $5 billion over a 10-year period in lobbying and campaign contributions in order to get deregulated. They wanted the government off of their backs. They wanted to do whatever they wanted to do, spent $5 billion over a 10-year period on lobbying and campaign contributions. Then, 10 years later, after their greed and recklessness and illegal behavior led to their collapse, what our system enabled them to do is to get bailed out by the United States government, which through Congress and the Fed provided trillions of dollars in aid to Wall Street. In other words, Wall Street used their wealth and power to get Congress to do their bidding for deregulation. And then, when Wall Street collapsed, they used their wealth and power to get bailed out. Quite a system. And then, to add insult to injury, we were told that not only were the banks too big to fail, we were told that the bankers were too big to jail. And this is the system. Young people who get caught possessing marijuana, they get police records. And many, many hundreds of thousands of them have received police records which have impacted their lives in very serious ways. On the other hand, Wall Street CEOs who helped destroy the economy, they don't get police records. They get raises in their salaries. And this is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. meant when he talked about socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for everyone else. In my view, it is time we had democratic socialism for working families, not just for Wall Street, billionaires, and large corporations. It means that we should not be providing welfare for corporations. It means that we should not be providing huge tax breaks for the wealthiest people in this country, or trade policies which boost corporate profits while they result in workers losing their jobs. It means that we create a government which works for all of the American people, not just powerful special interests. It means that economic rights must be an essential part of what America stands for. Among many other things, it means that health care should be a right of all people, not a privilege.